Sexual violence in this country is like loading up a 747 with women and crashing it into the ocean every single day. Every single day we load up a 747 with women, we crash it into the ocean, day after day after day.
We need to stop sexual violence, and it's going to take every one of us on a personal, individual level, community level, networking across lines into policy legislation. We need everybody.
There's things out there that I am learning that, that a year ago I had no clue about, where do we get to really what makes good policy to help them make a difference. And that's a part of my learning piece here, is to rely on people that have been doing this for a long time and do what I can to help be supportive.
Isn't it interesting that we're unwilling to do sex ed for kids, but they're surrounded by sex ed every day. That's 2 clicks of the mouse and they're in it. And the sex ed they're getting is something none of us want them to have.
So much energy in our world is consumed by people who are surviving things that they shouldn't have to have experienced. We know that this is of epidemic proportions in Minnesota and elsewhere. We're not unusual here in Minnesota. We've done this work really on the shoulders of survivors who were willing to speak out, and those stories are still critical today.
I was living in Minneapolis with my husband. I was about to turn 30. My husband had gone off for a week to take a workshop, so I was alone in our apartment. Went to sleep behind multiple locked doors, and I woke up at 4 in the morning, somewhere, like 4 in the morning, to someone in the doorway of the bedroom, and he flew through the air and landed on top of me. He had a knife. We had a struggle. I got cut up.
Prostitution is sexual violence. No matter how you look at it, it is sexual violence. When I look at once I got married and my husband coming home and sexually assaulting me, if I had to compare all 3 of those together, they were all the same.
I became aware of being sexually abused when I read an article out of Sports Illustrated in 1999. Never would have thought that I would have heard about sexual violence out of Sports Illustrated. But that helped me to come to the understanding that I was sexually abused and how it affected me.
I was sexually assaulted at a fraternity party. It was definitely alcohol facilitated, but there was question that I had also been slipped a date rape drug.
Certainly over 30 years we've been educating kids and done all of this sort of personal safety work. We've taught women self-defense. We've worked to make our policies better about intervening, in terms of law enforcement and prosecutors and so forth. And that hasn't stopped it. It hasn't changed anything. We are as good at developing and growing sex offenders in our communities as we ever have been.
Trauma specialist Dr. John Briere says toxic decisions seem rational in a toxic environment. Anytime the mass media is filled with pornified images, and by that I mean that pair the violence, the exploitation, and the degradation with sex and make it seem as if that is sexy. When our gender socialization continues to be destructive, and then on top of it we as adults are unwilling to talk about healthy sexuality in a comprehensive way and give accurate information, we have a sexually toxic society.
We know that we spend $8 billion a year on sexual violence. We know that the girls between the age of 13 and 17 are at the highest risk of victimization. We know there's certain populations that are way more victimized than others. Indian women, people of color, people with disabilities are 4 to 10 times more likely to be victims of sexual assault. There were 61,000 victims. That's the size of Owatonna and Mankato combined. This is not a small problem.
My background in nursing always leads me in the direction of work that we can do to prevent damage, prevent harm, prevent disease, to avoid or prevent sexual violence. Schools, healthcare providers, community and faith-based organizations also have a role to play in that.
What I'm excited about is that the field that is primarily focused in how do we help victims to survive and to heal after the trauma and after the victimization, have a chance to really focus in how do we mobilize around prevention? What do we do so that this never happens to anyone?
In Minnesota, we have smoke-free environments. 10 years ago, nobody believed that would have happened, but we did it. We made some steps and we made it happen.
They've quantified the cost of sexual violence in Minnesota, and they've laid out a plan. They've laid out interventions for the state to pursue. And I think that kind of foundation is really important in terms of policymaking and moving an issue forward, because then we have a foundation on which to build.
We can't be afraid to talk about it, and we see more allies stepping up saying, no, I'm willing to step out. I see what this is costing my family and my community, and I'm not afraid to address it.
Imagine what the world would be like without sexual violence, where we didn't need to be fearful and we didn't need to worry so much about our kids riding their bike around the block, that we have a caring community that does not tolerate sexual violence. We don't do it here, not in Minnesota.